Imagine opening your eyes in a world where no living creature has ever slept. No dreams have ever been dreamed. No one has ever closed their eyes to rest. Every human, every bird, and every animal remains awake, every moment of every day. It may sound like the perfect way to gain more time, yet life, as we know it, might never have existed at all. For thousands of years, people believed sleep was simply a time of rest. But behind closed eyes, one of the greatest mysteries of the human body has been quietly unfolding every single night. If you enjoy relaxing journeys through history and science, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now dim the lights, settle into a comfortable position, and let your imagination travel back millions of years to discover why every generation of life has surrendered to sleep. This is the true story of sleep. Imagine standing on Earth nearly 100,000 years ago, long before cities, kingdoms, or written history. The world is quieter than the one we know today, yet far more dangerous. Dense forests stretch beyond the horizon, rivers cut through untouched valleys, and enormous predators roam beneath the fading light of the setting sun. As darkness slowly covers the landscape, a small group of early humans gathers together. They have no clocks to tell the time, no beds to return to, and no understanding of biology or neuroscience. They do not know what dreams are or why their eyelids grow heavy every evening. Yet, just like every generation that will follow them, they surrender to sleep. Why? It is one of the oldest mysteries in the history of life. Every day, nearly every animal willingly enters a state in which it becomes slower, less aware of its surroundings, and far more vulnerable to danger. From an evolutionary perspective, this seems almost impossible to explain. Why would natural selection preserve a behavior that leaves an animal unable to defend itself for hours at a time? A sleeping deer cannot immediately flee from a predator. A sleeping bird cannot instantly escape danger. A sleeping human cannot react as quickly as one who is awake. If survival is nature's greatest priority, then why has sleep survived for hundreds of millions of years? For centuries, philosophers struggled with this question. Ancient civilizations believed sleep was simply a period of rest, a time when the body recovered from the work of the day. While rest is certainly part of the story, modern science has revealed something far more remarkable. Sleep is not a passive state in which the body simply shuts down. In many ways, it is one of the busiest periods of the entire day. Although our muscles relax and our awareness of the outside world fades, countless biological processes quietly begin working together with extraordinary precision. The brain reorganizes information, hormones are released, damaged tissues begin repairing themselves, and the immune system becomes increasingly active. Yet these discoveries are surprisingly recent. For most of human history, no one could have imagined the invisible work taking place behind closed eyes every single night. Long before scientists placed electrodes on sleeping volunteers or discovered brain waves, our ancestors had already developed a deep relationship with sleep. Their survival depended upon it, even though they could never explain why. As daylight faded, their bodies naturally responded to changes in light that had guided living organisms for millions of years. Without artificial lighting, evenings became darker far more quickly than they do today. The stars appeared overhead, temperatures gradually fell, and the sounds of daytime slowly gave way to the voices of nocturnal animals. Sleep was not scheduled by clocks. It was guided by nature itself. Early humans were not the first creatures to experience this mysterious rhythm. Long before our own species appeared, dinosaurs, mammals, birds, reptiles, and even much simpler organisms followed daily cycles of activity and rest. Modern research suggests that biological clocks may have existed for hundreds of millions of years, evolving alongside life itself. Some scientists believe the earliest forms of sleep may have emerged long before complex brains even evolved, allowing living organisms to conserve energy, repair cellular damage, and adapt to the repeating cycle of day and night. If this is true, then sleep is older than humanity, older than civilization, and perhaps even older than many of the animals we recognize today. As we follow the story back through time, an extraordinary realization begins to emerge. Sleep was never invented by humans. We inherited it from an ancient evolutionary history stretching back through countless generations of life. Every creature that survived long enough to become our ancestor also carried this remarkable biological rhythm within its body. The first humans did not choose to sleep. They were born into a world where sleep had already shaped life for millions of years. But while every animal sleeps, humans would eventually do something no other species could. They would transform sleep itself into culture, ritual, belief, and eventually science. And that journey begins with a simple discovery that changed every night forever: fire. For hundreds of thousands of years, the setting sun marked the beginning of humanity's most dangerous hours. Darkness transformed the landscape in ways that are difficult for us to imagine today. Without artificial light, the world became almost completely black. Predators that had remained hidden during the day suddenly became active. Lions, hyenas, wolves, saber-toothed cats, and countless other hunters relied upon the cover of night to search for food. For early humans, surviving until morning required far more than simply closing their eyes. It required trust, cooperation, and careful preparation. Archaeological evidence suggests that by at least 400,000 years ago, and possibly even earlier, human ancestors had learned to control fire. This achievement changed far more than the way food was cooked. Fire extended the day beyond sunset, providing warmth during cold nights, protection from many predators, and a safe gathering place where families could remain together after darkness fell. The flickering glow of a campfire became one of humanity's first sources of security. For the first time, people could sleep knowing that the darkness surrounding them was no longer entirely beyond their control. Around those early fires, something equally important began to develop. Sleep became a shared responsibility. Anthropologists believe that early human groups probably did not all sleep at exactly the same time. Some individuals likely remained awake while others rested, quietly watching the surrounding landscape for signs of danger. Recent research studying modern hunter-gatherer communities, including the Hadza people of Tanzania, has shown that within a group there is almost always someone awake during the night. Different ages and natural sleep patterns create overlapping periods of wakefulness, allowing the group to remain surprisingly well protected without any formal schedule. It is possible that our distant ancestors benefited from a similar pattern for thousands of generations. This simple form of cooperation may have offered one of humanity's greatest evolutionary advantages. A person sleeping alone on the prehistoric landscape was vulnerable. A family sleeping together around a fire, protected by companions and surrounded by many watchful ears, stood a far greater chance of surviving until sunrise. Sleep was no longer only a biological necessity. It had become a social activity that strengthened trust within the group. Every peaceful night depended upon everyone contributing to the safety of the community. As firelight illuminated familiar faces, evenings gradually became something more than a time of danger. Archaeologists believe these quiet hours created opportunities unlike any other period of the day. Hunting had ended. Gathering food was finished. Tools had been repaired. Families could finally sit together without rushing to complete another task before sunset. Around the fire, stories were shared, knowledge passed from one generation to the next, and perhaps the earliest myths and legends began to take shape. Some anthropologists have even suggested that these peaceful evenings may have helped accelerate the development of language itself, as conversation replaced constant movement and survival. Long before books, schools, or written history, the campfire became humanity's first classroom. Modern science has revealed another remarkable connection between those evenings and the sleeping brain. Throughout the day, people gathered new experiences, learned unfamiliar landscapes, remembered safe water sources, recognized dangerous animals, and strengthened social relationships within the group. During sleep, the brain quietly began organizing many of those memories, deciding which information should be preserved and which could be forgotten. Although early humans had no way of understanding this invisible process, every night's sleep was helping prepare them for the challenges of the following day. The lessons learned beside the fire did not simply disappear with sunrise. Sleep was helping transform experience into knowledge. Looking back, it becomes clear that fire did far more than chase away the darkness. It reshaped humanity's relationship with the night itself. The evening was no longer only a time to fear. It became a time to gather, to learn, to strengthen families, and eventually to dream. Yet even as people slept more safely than ever before, another mystery quietly accompanied them into the darkness. Every night, strange images, impossible places, and forgotten memories began appearing inside the sleeping mind. For thousands of years, no one understood where these visions came from. Some believed they were messages from the gods. Others thought they were journeys of the soul. The true story of dreams was only just beginning. As generations passed, sleep became far more than a simple biological necessity. It entered humanity's beliefs, religions, medicine, and daily life. Every civilization experienced sleep, yet none truly understood what happened after the eyes closed. Without microscopes, brain scans, or laboratories, people searched for answers using the knowledge available to them. Some believed sleep allowed the soul to travel beyond the body. Others thought it was a gift from the gods or a doorway through which divine messages could be received. Although their explanations were often very different from modern science, they all began with the same observation. Every night, something mysterious happened to every human being on Earth. Among the earliest civilizations to record their thoughts about sleep were the ancient Egyptians. More than 4,000 years ago, priests and physicians carefully documented dreams on papyrus scrolls, believing they could reveal hidden truths or even predict future events. Around 1275 BCE, the famous Chester Beatty Dream Book listed hundreds of different dreams alongside their possible meanings, making it one of the oldest surviving dream manuals in history. Certain temples even became known as places where people intentionally slept, hoping that the gods would appear in their dreams with guidance or healing. Sleep was not simply a period of rest. It was considered a bridge between the human world and the divine. Across the Mediterranean, the ancient Greeks developed a different understanding. By the 5th century BCE, physicians such as Hippocrates began suggesting that dreams might reflect a person's physical condition rather than messages sent by supernatural forces. This was a remarkable shift in thinking. Instead of looking only toward mythology, Greek physicians started observing the human body itself. Later, Aristotle wrote one of history's earliest scientific discussions of sleep in his work on sleep and sleeplessness asterisk, arguing that sleep was a natural biological process connected to the body's internal functions. Although many of his conclusions were later proven incorrect, his willingness to explain sleep through observation rather than mythology marked an important step towards scientific thinking. The Romans inherited many Greek ideas while adding their own customs. Wealthy families often slept on carefully constructed wooden beds topped with woven mattresses stuffed with wool, feathers, or straw, while poorer citizens rested on far simpler bedding. Bedrooms remained relatively dark and quiet after sunset because artificial light was expensive. Oil lamps provided only a gentle glow, encouraging people to follow the natural rhythm of daylight. Unlike the brightly illuminated cities of today, Roman nights became genuinely dark, allowing the body's internal clock to guide sleep much more naturally than modern electric lighting does. Farther east, ancient Chinese scholars also viewed sleep as an essential part of maintaining health. Traditional Chinese medicine, developed over many centuries, taught that the body's energy, known as asterisk chi asterisk, followed natural daily cycles. Proper sleep was believed to help restore harmony between the body's organs and maintain balance between yin and yang. Physicians advised people to follow regular sleeping habits, recognizing long before modern chronobiology that the timing of sleep could influence overall well-being. Although their explanations differed from modern neuroscience, many of their observations about healthy sleep routines remain surprisingly consistent with today's scientific recommendations. Despite the differences between these civilizations, a remarkable pattern begins to appear. Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, Chinese, and countless other cultures all understood one important truth. Sleep was never treated as wasted time. Whether it was viewed as communication with the gods, a medical necessity, or a natural rhythm of life, every civilization recognized that something valuable happened during the night. Yet no one could explain exactly what that mysterious process was. That answer would remain hidden for thousands of years. Ironically, one of history's greatest clues would not come from a laboratory at all, but from an old sleeping habit that almost the entire world has now forgotten. If you woke in the middle of the night today, you might assume something had gone wrong. Many people worry that waking after a few hours of sleep is a sign of stress or poor health. Yet, for much of human history, this experience appears to have been completely normal. In fact, millions of people may have spent centuries sleeping in two separate periods each night without giving it a second thought. One of the most remarkable discoveries in the history of sleep came not from a laboratory, but from old diaries, court records, medical books, and personal letters. During the 1990s, historian Roger Ekirch of Virginia Tech examined more than 500 historical documents dating from ancient times through the Middle Ages and into the early modern period. Again and again, he encountered the same forgotten expressions. First sleep, asterisk, and second sleep. At first, the references seemed ordinary, but as more evidence appeared, a fascinating picture began to emerge. For hundreds of years, many people did not expect to sleep continuously from evening until morning. Instead, they often went to bed soon after sunset and slept for 3 or 4 hours. Around midnight, they naturally woke and remained awake for roughly 1 hour before returning to bed for what they called their second sleep. During this quiet period between the two sleeps, people prayed, reflected, talked softly with family members, checked on animals, tended a fading fire, or simply sat peacefully in the darkness. Some physicians even believed this calm interval was one of the best times for thinking clearly because the mind felt unusually peaceful after the first period of rest. Why did this pattern disappear? The answer seems to lie not inside the human body, but in the changing world around it. As towns grew into cities and artificial lighting became more common, evenings gradually became longer. Candlelight, gas lamps, and eventually electric lights allowed people to remain active long after sunset. Work schedules became increasingly fixed during the Industrial Revolution, requiring millions of workers to wake at the same time each morning regardless of the season. Slowly, the natural rhythm of two separate sleeps gave way to the single uninterrupted night's sleep that most people consider normal today. Modern science has produced intriguing evidence supporting these historical observations. In the early 1990s, psychiatrist Thomas Weir conducted an experiment at the National Institute of Mental Health in the United States. Volunteers were exposed to long winter-like nights with 14 hours of darkness each day for several weeks. Without television, smartphones, or artificial evening light, many participants gradually stopped sleeping in one continuous block. Instead, they naturally developed two distinct periods of sleep, separated by 1 or 2 hours of quiet wakefulness, remarkably similar to the historical accounts that Roger Ekirch had uncovered. It suggested that segmented sleep may not have been a strange habit after all. It may simply have been the way the human body behaved before modern lighting transformed everyday life. Of course, this does not mean everyone throughout history followed exactly the same pattern. Climate, culture, geography, occupation, and season all influenced when people slept. A shepherd, a sailor, and a city merchant each lived according to different rhythms. Yet the historical evidence reminds us of something important. Sleep has never been completely fixed. Like many aspects of human life, it has adapted alongside civilization itself. As we look back across thousands of years, another surprising realization begins to appear. Humans have always believed they understood sleep because everyone experiences it. Yet again and again, history has shown that even our most familiar habits can hide extraordinary mysteries. By the beginning of the 20th century, scientists finally possessed new tools capable of looking beyond closed eyelids and into the sleeping brain itself. For the first time, they would not simply observe sleep. They would begin measuring it, and what they discovered would completely change humanity's understanding of the night. For thousands of years, humanity could only observe sleep from the outside. Parents watched sleeping children. Physicians examined resting patients. Philosophers debated the meaning of dreams, while priests searched for messages from the gods. Yet no one knew what was actually happening inside the brain. Every answer was built upon observation, belief, or careful guesswork. The greatest mystery remained hidden beneath closed eyes. That began to change during the 20th century, when science developed entirely new ways of studying the sleeping mind. One of the most important breakthroughs came in 1924, when the German psychiatrist Hans Berger successfully recorded the brain's electrical activity for the first time using a device he called the electroencephalograph, or EEG. Tiny electrical signals produced by millions of neurons could now be measured through harmless electrodes placed on the scalp. For the first time in history, scientists could watch the brain continue working even while the body appeared completely still. Sleep was no longer invisible. It had become something that could be recorded, measured, and carefully studied. As researchers observed these recordings, they noticed something unexpected. The sleeping brain did not simply slow down and remain unchanged throughout the night. Instead, its activity constantly shifted through different patterns. Slow, powerful brain waves appeared during deep sleep, while lighter stages produced very different rhythms. The brain was moving through an organized sequence rather than remaining in one continuous state. Sleep, it seemed, was far more complex than anyone had imagined. The next great discovery arrived almost 30 years later. In 1953, sleep researchers Eugene Aserinsky and his mentor Nathaniel Kleitman at the University of Chicago noticed that sleeping volunteers periodically moved their eyes rapidly beneath their closed eyelids. Curious about this unusual movement, they compared it with the brain's electrical activity recorded by the EEG. What they found surprised the scientific world. During these periods of rapid eye movement, the brain became remarkably active, almost resembling the activity of an awake person. Even more astonishing, when volunteers were awakened during this stage, most reported that they had been dreaming. This newly identified stage became known as rapid eye movement sleep, or REM sleep. It completely transformed humanity's understanding of the night. Sleep was no longer viewed as one long period of unconscious rest. Instead, scientists realized that the brain repeatedly cycled between different stages, each performing its own essential functions. Throughout a typical night, healthy adults move through these stages 4 to 6 times, with each complete cycle lasting roughly 90 minutes. Deep sleep gradually restores the body, while REM sleep becomes increasingly longer toward the morning, when dreams are often at their most vivid. Another young scientist, William Dement, immediately recognized the importance of these discoveries. During the 1950s and 1960s, he conducted pioneering research that established modern sleep science as its own field of study. Dement demonstrated that REM sleep was not an unusual event occurring only occasionally. It was a normal and essential part of every healthy night's sleep. His work helped create the first dedicated sleep research laboratories and inspired decades of new discoveries that continue today. As evidence accumulated, Scientists reached an extraordinary conclusion. Sleep was not the opposite of wakefulness. It was an active biological process carefully organized by the brain itself. Every stage served a purpose. Every cycle followed a remarkably precise rhythm. The sleeping brain was not shutting down. It was working with incredible complexity while the conscious mind remained unaware. Yet one question still refused to disappear. If REM sleep was the stage most closely connected with dreams, why did the brain create them in the first place? Were dreams simply meaningless stories produced by a resting mind, or did they serve a deeper purpose? To answer that question, scientists would have to explore one of the most fascinating mysteries of human consciousness itself. The discovery of REM sleep answered one important question, but it immediately created another. If dreams occurred during one of the brain's most active stages of sleep, then why did the brain produce them at all? Every night, people found themselves walking through impossible cities, speaking with loved ones who had long since disappeared, flying above landscapes that had never existed, or reliving memories that seemed almost forgotten. Dreams could feel astonishingly real, yet they vanished within minutes of waking. For thousands of years, humanity searched for their meaning, and every civilization offered its own explanation. The ancient Egyptians believed dreams could carry messages from the gods. Greek temples dedicated to Asclepius welcomed visitors, seeking healing through what became known as dream incubation. Patients slept inside sacred temples, hoping divine visions would reveal cures for illness or guidance for important decisions. Similar beliefs appeared across Mesopotamia, China, and many indigenous cultures around the world. Dreams were often treated with deep respect because they seemed to come from somewhere beyond ordinary human experience. Without any understanding of the sleeping brain, this explanation appeared perfectly reasonable. By the end of the 19th century, the conversation began to change. In 1899, the Austrian neurologist Sigmund Freud published The Interpretation of Dreams, one of the most influential books in the history of psychology. Freud argued that dreams were not messages from supernatural forces, but expressions of unconscious wishes, hidden fears, and unresolved emotions. According to his theory, the sleeping mind disguised these thoughts through symbols that could be interpreted. A few decades later, the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung proposed a different perspective. He believed dreams connected not only to personal experiences, but also to what he called the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of symbols and archetypes inherited across humanity. Although many of their ideas remain debated today, Freud and Jung permanently changed the way people thought about dreams, moving the discussion from religion towards psychology. Modern neuroscience has revealed an even more fascinating picture. Brain imaging studies show that during REM sleep, regions involved in emotion, memory, and visual imagination become highly active, while areas responsible for logical reasoning and critical judgment become less active. This may explain why dreams often feel emotionally powerful while accepting impossible events without question. We rarely stop to ask why we are walking through ancient Rome with a childhood friend or speaking to someone who lived centuries ago. The dreaming brain experiences these moments as completely natural. Researchers now believe dreams may perform several important functions rather than serving a single purpose. Some studies suggest dreaming helps strengthen memories by organizing information gathered throughout the day. Others propose that dreams allow the brain to process emotional experiences in a safe environment, reducing the intensity of difficult memories over time. Another theory suggests dreams help prepare us for future challenges by allowing the brain to simulate situations without real-world consequences. Although scientists continue debating exactly why dreams exist, one conclusion has become increasingly clear. Dreaming is not a meaningless accident. It appears to be a normal and valuable part of a healthy sleeping brain. Perhaps the most remarkable discovery is that people dream far more often than they realize. A healthy adult typically enters REM sleep 4 to 6 times each night and may spend nearly 2 hours dreaming before morning. Most of those dreams are forgotten within minutes after waking because the brain stores them differently from ordinary memories. Entire adventures unfold every night, only to disappear almost as quickly as they appeared. In a lifetime, the average person may spend nearly 6 years dreaming without remembering the vast majority of those experiences. The more science learns about dreams, the more extraordinary they become. What ancient civilizations once described as messages from the gods now appears to be the result of one of the most complex biological processes ever discovered. Yet, despite decades of research, dreams still refuse to surrender all of their secrets. We can observe the sleeping brain, measure its electrical activity, and even identify the stages in which dreams occur. But one mystery remains unanswered. What happens when the brain is denied sleep altogether? History has provided a few rare opportunities to find out, and the results have been as fascinating as they have been unsettling. By the middle of the 20th century, scientists had learned a great deal about how the sleeping brain behaved. They could identify REM sleep, measure brain waves, and observe the body's changing rhythms throughout the night. Yet one question still remained unanswered. If sleep was truly essential, what would happen if a healthy person simply stopped sleeping? How long could the human body continue functioning? And which would fail first, the body or the mind? Finding the answer was far more difficult than it seemed. Deliberately keeping someone awake for long periods raised serious ethical concerns, and by the 1960s, very few researchers were willing to attempt such experiments. Then, almost by accident, history produced one of the most famous sleep studies ever recorded. In December 1963, a 17-year-old high school student from San Diego named Randy Gardner volunteered for a school science fair project. Together with two classmates, he set out to answer a question that fascinated many people but had rarely been tested under careful observation. How long could a healthy human remain awake? None of them expected the experiment to become one of the best-known sleep deprivation studies in history. As the hours passed, Gardner initially appeared surprisingly normal. He laughed with friends, played games, and carried on conversations much as he always had. But after the first full day without sleep, subtle changes began to appear. His concentration became less reliable, simple calculations took longer, and his reactions gradually slowed. By the third day, remaining focused required increasing effort. His mood shifted unpredictably, and ordinary tasks that normally required little attention became unexpectedly difficult. As the experiment continued, the effects became far more dramatic. Gardner occasionally struggled to remember recent events and sometimes found it difficult to maintain clear conversations. His sense of time became distorted, and he experienced brief moments of confusion. Around the fourth and fifth days, he began reporting visual hallucinations. Objects seemed to change shape, shadows appeared to move, and familiar surroundings no longer looked entirely real. Although his body remained awake, his brain was beginning to behave in remarkable ways. Neurologist William Dement, one of the pioneers of modern sleep research, monitored portions of the experiment, while military physician Lieutenant Commander John J. Ross later conducted neurological examinations. Surprisingly, despite Gardner's obvious mental fatigue, doctors found no evidence of permanent physical damage. On January 8, 1964, after remaining awake for approximately 264 hours and 25 minutes, just over 11 consecutive days, Gardner finally went to sleep. Scientists expected him to remain unconscious for an unusually long time, but the result was unexpected. He slept for about 15 hours before waking naturally. Over the following days, his normal sleep patterns gradually returned without lasting neurological problems. The experiment revealed something extraordinary. The greatest effects of prolonged sleep deprivation appeared first in the brain rather than the body. Memory weakened. Attention declined. Emotions became more difficult to control. The brain struggled to interpret reality accurately, producing hallucinations and confusion while the body itself remained capable of functioning. It was as though the mind could no longer maintain the stable picture of the world that waking consciousness normally provides. Today, scientists would never repeat Randy Gardner's experiment under the same conditions. Modern ethical standards place far greater emphasis on participant safety, and researchers now understand that prolonged sleep deprivation carries significant risks. Nevertheless, Gardner's experience remains one of the most carefully documented examples of extended wakefulness ever recorded. It demonstrated something both fascinating and unsettling. Sleep is not simply something we enjoy after a long day. It is a biological requirement that the brain eventually demands, no matter how determined we are to resist it. Yet Randy Gardner's remarkable experience represented only one side of the story. History has shown that there are moments when people are forced to remain awake, not for curiosity or science, but because their lives depend on it. Soldiers, pilots, astronauts, emergency physicians, and explorers have all faced situations where sleep became a luxury they could not afford. Their experiences would reveal even more about the remarkable limits of the human mind. Randy Gardner's experiment demonstrated what could happen when one person voluntarily remained awake for scientific curiosity. But history has repeatedly shown that millions of people have faced a far more difficult challenge. They did not choose to stay awake. Circumstances demanded it. During wars, natural disasters, medical emergencies, and space exploration, sleep has often become one of the most valuable resources a human being can possess. In these moments, scientists discovered something remarkable. The longer people fought against sleep, the more the brain fought back. During the Second World War, military commanders quickly realized that exhaustion could become as dangerous as enemy fire. Pilots flying long bombing missions, sailors crossing the Atlantic, and soldiers defending positions for days at a time all experienced the same invisible enemy. As wakefulness continued, reaction time slowed, judgment became less reliable, and small mistakes began multiplying. A tired pilot might misread an instrument. A fatigued sentry could overlook approaching danger. An exhausted commander might make decisions that appeared logical in the moment, but proved disastrous only hours later. Sleep deprivation was quietly influencing the outcome of military operations around the world. The problem did not disappear after the war ended. During the Korean War and later in the Vietnam War, military researchers devoted increasing attention to understanding fatigue. Studies showed that after roughly 24 hours without sleep, many cognitive abilities declined to a level comparable with significant alcohol intoxication. Memory weakened, attention wandered, and decision-making became increasingly unpredictable. The body could often continue moving, but the brain was no longer performing at its full capacity. These discoveries changed military training, leading many armed forces to recognize that proper sleep was not a sign of weakness, but an essential part of maintaining combat effectiveness. Similar lessons emerged in aviation. As commercial air travel expanded during the 20th century, investigators noticed that fatigue contributed to numerous accidents and near misses. Flying an aircraft requires constant attention, rapid calculations, and precise judgment, all of which depend heavily on a well-rested brain. This led airlines and aviation authorities to introduce strict regulations limiting how many hours pilots could remain on duty before mandatory rest periods. Protecting passengers increasingly meant protecting the pilot's sleep. Even space exploration revealed the extraordinary importance of sleep. During long-duration missions, astronauts experience frequent interruptions to their natural circadian rhythms as the sun rises and sets every 90 minutes while orbiting Earth. NASA researchers discovered that inadequate sleep reduced concentration, slowed reaction times, and increased the likelihood of operational errors inside spacecraft, where even a minor mistake could have serious consequences. To improve performance, NASA began studying strategic naps, carefully timed light exposure, and methods for protecting healthy sleep schedules during spaceflight. One of its most well-known findings showed that a properly timed short nap, often lasting about 26 minutes, could significantly improve alertness and performance without causing prolonged grogginess. Sometimes, a brief period of sleep proved more effective than hours of pushing through exhaustion. The importance of sleep extends far beyond soldiers, pilots, and astronauts. Doctors working overnight shifts, firefighters responding to emergencies, nurses caring for critically ill patients, and countless others whose professions demand constant vigilance all depend upon the brain's ability to remain alert. Modern hospitals, transportation systems, and emergency services now pay far greater attention to fatigue than they did only a few decades ago. Research has repeatedly demonstrated that protecting sleep also protects human lives. Looking across these very different worlds, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Humanity has built remarkable machines capable of crossing oceans, reaching space, and connecting continents in a matter of hours. Yet the human brain continues to obey the same ancient biological rules that guided our earliest ancestors, sleeping beside a campfire hundreds of thousands of years ago. No technology has ever eliminated our need for sleep. Instead, every scientific discovery has strengthened the same conclusion. Sleep is not an obstacle standing in the way of progress. It is one of the hidden foundations that makes progress possible. And while history has shown us what happens when sleep is lost, science is only now beginning to understand the extraordinary work that takes place during a healthy night's rest. That invisible work may be the greatest reason evolution refused to give up sleep in the first place. After exploring ancient beliefs, forgotten sleeping habits, and the remarkable experiments that revealed the consequences of staying awake, we arrive at perhaps the most fascinating question of all. If sleep is so essential, what is actually happening while we are asleep? At first glance, the answer appears surprisingly simple. Our eyes are closed. Our muscles relax. We barely move for hours. To someone watching from across the room, it seems as though almost nothing is happening. Yet modern science has revealed exactly the opposite. Sleep is one of the busiest periods in the life of the human body. One of the most extraordinary discoveries of the past decade concerns the brain itself. For many years, scientists wondered how the brain removed the waste products produced by billions of active neurons throughout the day. Every other organ in the body possesses a lymphatic system that helps carry away unwanted materials, but the brain appeared to have no equivalent. Then, in 2012, researchers at the University of Rochester identified what is now known as the glymphatic system. During deep sleep, tiny channels surrounding blood vessels expand, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flow more freely through brain tissue. Like a gentle nighttime cleaning crew, this fluid carries away proteins and metabolic waste that have accumulated while we were awake. Remarkably, this cleaning process becomes far more active during sleep than during the day, helping maintain the long-term health of the brain. At the same time, the brain begins organizing memories. Throughout the day, we experience thousands of sights, sounds, conversations, and emotions. Most are temporary, while a few deserve to be remembered for years or even a lifetime. During sleep, especially during both deep sleep and REM sleep, networks of neurons repeatedly reactivate patterns created while we were awake. Scientists believe this process strengthens important memories while allowing less useful information to gradually fade. In other words, sleep helps transform today's experiences into tomorrow's knowledge. Students who sleep well after learning new information consistently perform better than those who remain awake throughout the night, demonstrating that memory is built not only while we learn, but also while we sleep. Sleep also serves as one of the body's most important periods of physical recovery. Shortly after falling asleep, the pituitary gland releases increased amounts of growth hormone, helping repair muscles, bones, and other tissues damaged during normal daily activity. Tiny injuries begin healing. Cells replace worn-out components. Proteins essential for maintaining healthy organs are produced more efficiently. Even athletes often describe sleep as one of the most effective forms of recovery because many of the body's repair systems become especially active during the deepest stages of sleep. Meanwhile, the immune system quietly strengthens its defenses. During healthy sleep, immune cells communicate using specialized signaling molecules called cytokines, coordinating responses that help fight infections and reduce inflammation. Research has repeatedly shown that people who regularly sleep too little are more likely to become ill after exposure to common viruses than those who obtain sufficient rest. In one well-known study, volunteers sleeping fewer than 7 hours each night were significantly more likely to develop symptoms after being exposed to the common cold virus than participants who slept 8 hours or more. While we rest, our immune system prepares for challenges we may not even realize are approaching. Looking inside the sleeping body, it becomes clear that rest is only part of the story. The brain cleans itself, memories become stronger, hormones restore damaged tissues. The immune system prepares its defenses. Countless biological processes continue working together with remarkable precision, while our conscious mind remains completely unaware. Perhaps the greatest surprise is that none of these systems work alone. Every organ, every cell, and every rhythm follows an ancient biological choreography refined through millions of years of evolution. Yet the most astonishing evidence that sleep is essential may not come from humans at all. It comes from the countless other creatures that share our planet, each following remarkably different sleeping patterns while serving the very same purpose. Humans often think of sleep as something deeply personal. Every evening, we close our own eyes, drift into our own dreams, and wake to begin another day. Yet the story of sleep is far larger than humanity. Every corner of the natural world reveals a different solution to the same ancient challenge. Every animal must balance two competing needs, staying alive by remaining alert and staying alive by getting enough sleep. Over millions of years, evolution has produced an astonishing variety of answers, many of which seem almost impossible at first glance. Consider the giraffe, one of the tallest animals ever to walk the earth. Standing several meters above the ground, it spends much of its life searching for food while remaining constantly aware of predators. Adult giraffes often sleep for only about 2 hours each day, usually in short periods lasting just a few minutes at a time. Remaining asleep for long stretches would leave them dangerously vulnerable on the open African plains. Their sleep has evolved to match the demands of their environment rather than following a single universal pattern. At the opposite extreme are animals such as bats. Some species spend nearly 20 hours each day asleep, hanging safely upside down inside protected caves where predators are relatively uncommon. Their slow metabolism and energy-intensive lifestyle make long periods of sleep an effective survival strategy. What appears excessive from a human perspective is perfectly suited to their way of life. Evolution has never required every species to sleep for the same amount of time. Instead, it has shaped sleep according to the unique challenges each animal faces. Perhaps the most extraordinary example belongs to dolphins. Unlike humans, dolphins cannot completely surrender to unconsciousness because they must continue surfacing to breathe. Scientists discovered that dolphins solve this problem through a remarkable adaptation known as unihemispheric sleep. One half of the brain sleeps while the other half remains awake, allowing the animal to continue swimming, breathe consciously, and remain alert to danger. After a period of rest, the two halves switch roles. In effect, the dolphin sleeps with only half of its brain at a time, a solution unlike anything found in humans. Many birds possess equally remarkable abilities. During long migratory journeys that span thousands of kilometers, certain species can briefly enter a form of one-sided sleep while continuing to fly. Frigate birds, for example, have been observed sleeping for only a few seconds at a time while gliding through the air over the open ocean. Once they return to land, they compensate by sleeping for much longer periods. Their brains carefully adjust sleep according to the demands of survival, demonstrating once again that sleep is not a rigid process, but an incredibly flexible biological system. Even creatures far removed from mammals display surprisingly complex sleeping behaviors. In recent years, researchers studying octopuses noticed that these intelligent animals periodically change color, move their eyes, and twitch their arms while resting. Their activity resembles the rapid eye movement seen in dreaming mammals and birds, leading some scientists to wonder whether octopuses may experience a dreamlike state despite evolving along a completely different branch of the tree of life more than 500 million years ago. Although many questions remain unanswered, the discovery suggests that complex sleep may have evolved more than once in Earth's history. Looking across the animal kingdom, an extraordinary pattern begins to emerge. No matter whether an animal lives beneath the ocean, flies above the clouds, hunts across frozen landscapes, or walks through tropical forests, sleep is always present in one form or another. The amount may change, the pattern may change, even the way the brain sleeps may change. But sleep itself never disappears. It has survived asteroid impacts, ice ages, mass extinctions, and hundreds of millions of years of evolution. Few biological behaviors have remained so universal for so long. As we prepare to answer the question that has guided this entire journey, one final realization begins to take shape. Sleep is not simply a habit shared by humans. It is one of life's oldest and most successful inventions, preserved across countless species because it offered an advantage too important for evolution to abandon. The final mystery is no longer whether sleep has a purpose. It is understanding what that purpose ultimately tells us about ourselves, our brains, and the extraordinary story of life on Earth. After traveling across millions of years of evolution, exploring ancient civilizations, forgotten sleeping traditions, remarkable scientific discoveries, and some of history's most famous sleep experiments, we finally return to the question that has quietly guided our entire journey. Why do we sleep? It is a question that has fascinated philosophers, physicians, psychologists, and neuroscientists for centuries. Yet, despite everything science has learned, the answer is still more complex than many people imagine. Sleep does not exist for just one reason. It is the result of millions of years of evolution solving countless biological challenges at the same time. One of the oldest ideas is known as the energy conservation theory. Every living creature requires energy to survive, and remaining active throughout the entire day and night would consume enormous amounts of it. By becoming less active during periods when finding food is difficult or dangerous, animals increase their chances of survival. While this explanation makes sense, scientists soon realized that conserving energy alone could never explain why the sleeping brain remains so incredibly active. Sleep was clearly doing far more than simply saving calories. Another explanation focuses on restoration. Throughout the day, every cell in the body experiences tiny amounts of wear and tear. Muscles become fatigued. Proteins break down. The immune system responds to countless invisible threats. Inside the brain, billions of neurons constantly exchange electrical signals while producing metabolic waste. Sleep provides the body with a carefully protected period during which repair becomes the highest priority. Hormones stimulate tissue growth, damaged cells begin recovering, the immune system strengthens its defenses, and the glymphatic system quietly removes waste products from the brain. In many ways, the sleeping body resembles a city that performs its most important maintenance work only after the streets have become quiet. Memory offers another essential piece of the puzzle. Every day we encounter far more information than the brain could possibly keep forever. Conversations, faces, sounds, places, emotions, and experiences continuously compete for space inside our memory. During sleep, especially during deep sleep and REM sleep, the brain carefully strengthens important connections while allowing less useful information to fade. Rather than being wasted time, sleep is one of the most productive learning periods of the entire day. It quietly transforms experience into knowledge without requiring any conscious effort from us. There is also a fascinating evolutionary perspective. Some researchers suggest that sleep originally developed as a strategy to keep animals safe during the most dangerous hours of their environment. A small daytime animal might survive more easily by resting quietly throughout the night, while a nocturnal predator benefits from sleeping during daylight hours. In this view, sleep is not only about what happens inside the body, but also about avoiding unnecessary risks. Instead of constantly competing with stronger predators or wasting energy when food is scarce, evolution encouraged different species to become active at different times. Sleep helped organize life itself. Today, most scientists agree that no single theory explains everything. Sleep conserves energy. It repairs the body. It strengthens memory. It supports the immune system. It regulates hormones. It protects emotional health. It allows the brain to remove harmful waste while preparing for another day of learning and adaptation. Rather than serving one purpose, sleep performs dozens of vital functions simultaneously. Perhaps this explains why evolution has protected it so carefully for hundreds of millions of years. Remove almost any other biological behavior for a short time, and the body struggles. Remove sleep for too long, and even the remarkable human brain begins to lose its ability to understand the world around it. And yet, after all of these discoveries, one beautiful truth still remains. We can now measure brain waves, observe sleeping neurons, and watch the brain cleaning itself in extraordinary detail. We understand more about sleep today than any generation before us. But the deeper we explore this ancient biological rhythm, the more we realize that sleep is not simply a pause in life. It is an essential part of life itself. And perhaps that realization finally brings us to the answer we have been searching for since the very beginning of our journey. At the beginning of our journey, we asked a simple question. Why do we sleep? It is a question that every generation has asked in one form or another. Ancient Egyptians searched for the answer in dreams. Greek philosophers searched for it through reason. Medieval physicians searched for it in the balance of the body. Modern scientists searched for it inside the electrical signals of the brain. After thousands of years of curiosity, one remarkable truth has finally begun to emerge. Sleep was never nature's mistake. It was never wasted time. It was never simply a pause between one day and the next. Long before the first human walked across the earth, long before the first campfire illuminated the darkness, and long before the first civilization recorded its history, evolution had already discovered something extraordinary. The safest, strongest, and most intelligent creatures were not the ones that remained awake the longest. They were the ones that learned when to rest. Every chapter of our story has quietly pointed toward the same conclusion. The first humans gathered around fire because it made sleep safer. Ancient civilizations built beliefs and rituals around sleep because they recognized its mysterious importance. Scientists eventually discovered that the sleeping brain is astonishingly active rather than silent. Sleep strengthens memory, repairs the body, supports the immune system, organizes emotions, removes harmful waste from the brain, and prepares us for another day of life. Every new discovery has revealed that sleep is not something evolution tolerated. It is something evolution carefully protected. Perhaps the most surprising realization is that sleep has never belonged only to humans. Dolphins sleep with half of their brain while continuing to swim. Birds briefly sleep during long migrations across oceans. Bats spend most of their lives asleep, while giraffes survive on only a few hours each day. Even creatures separated from us by hundreds of millions of years appear to experience their own forms of sleep. Across forests, deserts, oceans, mountains, and skies, life has reached the same conclusion again and again. Different species sleep differently, but almost none have abandoned sleep altogether. That alone tells us something extraordinary. Few biological behaviors have survived for so long across so many different forms of life. So why do we sleep? The answer is not because our bodies become tired. We sleep because life itself depends upon it. Sleep is the quiet workshop where memories become stronger, wounds begin to heal, the brain restores itself, and tomorrow is carefully prepared while today gently comes to an end. It is one of the rare moments when doing nothing on the outside allows countless important things to happen on the inside. In the modern world, sleep is often treated as something to shorten, postpone, or sacrifice in the pursuit of productivity. Yet history tells a very different story. Every civilization that came before us surrendered to sleep. Every great thinker, every explorer, every artist, every scientist, every emperor, every child, and every ordinary person closed their eyes beneath the same night sky. No amount of wealth, knowledge, or power has ever allowed humanity to escape this ancient rhythm. Sleep has always been the great equalizer, quietly reminding us that beneath all our achievements, we remain part of the natural world that shaped us. Perhaps that is the real answer we have been searching for since the beginning. Sleep is not the opposite of life. It is one of the reasons life has survived for hundreds of millions of years. It is one of evolution's greatest masterpieces, patiently refined across countless generations, until it became one of the most essential processes shared by almost every living creature on Earth. And tonight, as you prepare to close your own eyes, remember that you are taking part in a story far older than history itself. A story that began hundreds of millions of years before the first human ever looked up at the stars. A story shared by countless generations of life, quietly repeated every single night. This is the true story of sleep. Thank you for joining me on tonight's journey through history and science. If you enjoyed this peaceful exploration, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps this channel continue creating long, relaxing documentaries designed to help you unwind, learn something new, and gently drift off to sleep. If there is another fascinating mystery from history or science you would like to explore in a future episode, Feel free to share your suggestion in the comments below. I always enjoy reading your ideas. And now, wherever you are in the world, I hope you can leave behind the noise of the day, slow your thoughts, and enjoy a peaceful night's rest. Thank you for spending this time with me. Sleep well, and I'll see you in the next journey through history. Good night.